We're in Geelong. We're broadcasting to you from the Devlin Apartments. You may hear some jackhammers in the background. We're well into demolition here, so we'll press on. I'm going to be your moderator for this morning. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. You may find there's some pauses in the presentation as we go along. Please don't leave us. It's just that the video stream will be just buffering, so please be patient. Now, as we go along, I'm sure you're all going to have some questions. You'll see on the right-hand side of your screen there's a toolbar where you can type in questions, and we'll answer those towards the end of the presentation. So, without any further ado, I'll pass you on to Phil Petch. Thanks, John. Yes, look, I'm the director of Mirrabel Heights, who's a developer of the Devlin Apartments. I'm not a real estate agent. I'm the developer. So, without any further ado, I think we'll press on. So, remember a time when investing in residential property was straightforward? Back in the days of Johnny Howard, the typical strategy back then was to purchase residential property for investment purposes, needed gear it, so your outgoings exceeded your incoming income, and you hope like hell you'd make a capital gain down the track. So I'm going to present an alternative model, which is really depending on return by yield, enduring yield. So today we're going to look on why yield is important, residential commercial properties as strategy, and then we look at the strategy in action. We're going to look at a project we undertook in Geelong a couple of years ago and how that's performing. It's a real life case study. And then we're going to talk briefly about our current project, the Devlin. So what is yield? Well, yield means different things to different people. For a residential estate agent like John here from LG Hooker, they would talk about yield as being the amount of rent received ignoring outgoings. A commercial agent may talk about yield as net yield, but ignoring outgoings which are paid by the tenant. So for our purposes today, we're looking at yield as being the annual income received on the actual residential property investment after deduction of all costs, so commissions, rates, etc., etc. And this is expressed as an annual percentage of the cost of investment. So yield versus risk. I'm very fond of rules of thumbs, as you'll see as we go along. The higher the yield, the higher the risk. Each property style has its own risk attributes. So if you look at cash, which is a base type commodity, your yields are low on cash. You could probably get 3% if you're lucky. Low risk is backed by the government, and low entry costs. There's no stamp duty, etc. Commercial property around the $1 million circa mark. Very high yields, but that's accompanied with high risk. At this level, your tenants are often in the small business sector. They're subject to the ups and downs of the economy. And often if you lose a tenant, it might be another 12 months before you find another one. And in the meantime, you're responsible for outgoings. So that can be a double whammy. Entry costs are high. The banks will only lend you up to 60%. And you're paying stamp duty as well. REITs, which are real estate investment trusts, these can be listed or unlisted. They're doing quite well at the moment, so your yield there is medium-high. The risk is medium. For those trusts that are listed, you're subject to the ups and downs of the stock market. And for unlisted, you're really subject to the whims of the manager and the bank. You don't actually own a freehold asset, only an interest in that. So you're subject to the whims of other people. Entry costs is low to medium. Residential property, which is what we're talking about today. The yields here are low. I'm looking at John now. The typical yield you would achieve in Geelong would be around about a net 3% yield. Risks are medium, entry costs are medium. You can get up to 80% gearing from a bank, but then you've got stamp duty costs as well, which should be up to 5%. So just look at the very simple graph here. High yield gives you low capital. Sorry, I'll start that again. Another accepted rule of thumb is that you can't really have both high residential yields and high capital growth. You can often have a high yield, low capital growth, low yield, high capital growth. On some occasions, you get both. It's very unusual, as we'll discover as we go along. You can achieve high yield, but you'll high yield on residential property, but often equates to poor growth. I'm looking at a couple of properties here from residential from regional Victoria. By virtue of the low cost base of the asset, you get quite a good yield, but the growth prospects are poor. Terrace house in South Yarra or Carlton, again, the cost base of the asset is high, so your yield is often low, but you often get strong capital growth. On rare occasions, you can get both high yield and strong capital growth, but I've got that here that really equals investment lunacy. I'm looking at the experience we saw with the Australian commodity towns, where pre-GFC we're having both rising rents and growing capital rates. But then when that all came crashing down with lowering commodity prices, hit with a double whammy. So falling yields and actually making negative growth. This is poor headline. I think it's actually getting worse than what the graph's saying there. You can achieve it, but you really need to be in the sweet spot. So what we really want to talk about today is residential commercial property. So what is it? It's really, with the right design, location and structure, its potential to offer you both the low risk attributes of residential property, which we talked about. It can give you the high yields of commercial property and also give you prospects for capital growth. So what is residential commercial property?
There's no background noise.